shall be as flames. Behold, the day of Yahweh cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and Orion shall not cause their light to shine. The sun darkened in his going forth, and the moonlight shall not shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause to cease the arrogancy of the proud, and lay low the haughtiness of the terrible.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing in the book of Isaiah, chapter 24, known as the Apocalypse of Isaiah to some. And that's how it was introduced to me. And there are certainly apocalyptic things here, though not in the sense that I think of the word. I think of the word as apocalypse in its actual meaning as revealing. I think in society, it's come to mean something like devastation. Like a post-apocalyptic world is a world after some sort of, it could be a nuclear war, whatever, a plague, And in fact, that's why I made the band called the Quest Lords of the Apocalypse. It's kind of a joke about the way we reacted to the pandemic and stuff and the events of the last year. And, because it wasn't particularly apocalyptic, but in the sense of revealing things, it was. But not in the sense of the Bible revealing, because the apocalypse of Jesus Christ is the revealing of Christ to the world, and the revealing to his prophets and apostles and, everyone in the church what things we need to know for if we should live in the end times. Write these things. They were written for a reason, for our admonition upon whom the ends of the world are come. And so they're important. Okay, so we were in verse, 14, right? Again, at 13 they talked about that gleaning grapes, the idea that there's always a remnant, there's always something left over, no matter how thorough the harvest. No matter how thorough the harvester. Like we have machines that harvest now. And it's probably not surprising to know that machines aren't 100% efficient. But they're actually more efficient than people. As far as if you're talking about large, you're doing a big job, sometimes by hand is the most not efficient way, but let's say conservative way. If you don't want to miss a single grain, you might have to go through there by finger, right? But that's just going to take forever, so it's not worth it. So they harvest faster than that. Well, machines harvest even faster and very accurately. But every year I see them loosing cows into the corn. And why would they do that? Why would they put cows out in the corn? Well, because they harvest the corn, you figure the corn's all gone. What's left to eat? Well, there's always gleanings. They send them out because there's always stuff that falls, spills especially, really, hooking up the equipment, it seems to me, would be a time when you get spills and stuff. But just no process is totally perfect. And so there's gleaning. Even when the Lord pours out his wrath on the world, there will be those who are not destroyed by it. There will be gleanings in that sense. That's kind of a cool verse to go along with that. They shall lift up their voice, and they shall sing for the majesty of the Lord. They shall cry aloud from the sea. Wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires, even in the name of the Lord God of Israel in the isles of the sea. From the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs, even glory to the righteous. But I said, my leanness, woe unto me. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously. Yea, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. And he that cometh out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. And the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. So that is an apocalyptic thing. Now, there you see the sense of the apocalypse, the revealing of God. The moon should be confounded, the sun ashamed. That's language that Jesus used in Mark 13, in Matthew 24, Luke 21. The sun and the moon shall be darkened. Well, actually, I'm quoting. And the stars which are there shining. I was quoting Joel, which is a little later. No, Joel is, no. I was thinking Joel was contemporary with Isaiah. I don't believe he was. I could just look at the first few verses. It doesn't say. Sometimes it says in the reign of. I just looked up Joel. It doesn't say. I'm not going to bother right now. It's not a critical fact to go along with the study. But you see how the revealing of God showing up, God executing judgment, that revelation of God's appearing and setting things in the world straight. And also the certain events that take place around that. Let's look at everything. Yes, destruction is part of the apocalypse, but it is not the whole story. That's why it's like apocalyptic is not just, post-nuclear or post some sort of great devastation. It means what happens when God reveals himself to the world. That's what the true nature of the apocalypse is. It means the unveiling. It's when reality becomes unveiled. The book reveals it ahead of time, but obviously that's not good enough. Because men don't heed the book. If men would heed the words, then there would be no need for an apocalypse. But because men continually fight and bite and scratch and kick and and bite and snatch at one another, and have no, and we can never agree on everything. We need an apocalypse eventually because the world will never be right without it. The world will never be right without Christ actually coming. That's for sure. So, when thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, they shall be as a shaking of an olive tree. When this desolation, there's going to be a remnant, and they lift up their voice and cry aloud from the sea. Obviously, because dead people don't sing. But the idea that there is something left over, and not necessarily, it could even go like it says, we shall not all sleep. Not only is God's wrath not going to kill everybody in one fell swoop, like when he returns, but also, prior to that, the wrath of the enemy shall not kill us all. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed in the moment of the twinkling of an eye. There's a remnant of believers who also persist to the end, and they will be changed. When the Lord appears in the sky to return to earth, the living will not precede the dead. The dead will be resurrected and join him, and then the living will be resurrected immediately thereafter. Also join him to ever be with the Lord. But the Lord is not going back to heaven. You gotta understand, there's no return to heaven. He's going to earth. That part is just not true. It's a product of bad interpretation. But, you don't have to agree with me entirely on that. We can discuss that later. So, glorify ye the Lord in the fires, in the name of the Lord in the isles of the sea. I think because then the coast of the sea refers to, when Isles often refer to the word is the same thing that is used for coasts or borders. And I think here he's talking about people who have fled as far from the problems that are inherent in what he's talking about. So they're scattered is the point. The remnant is scattered. Just like in the top of the uppermost bough of the tree. So they're also at the edges of everything, at the edges of even human existence, in the fires. Glorify the Lord in the fires. Obviously, that doesn't mean literally as you're burning, but in that metaphorical sense of being in the fire of tribulation. Just like the Hebrew children. Now, Isaiah wouldn't have reference to that because he predated the book of Daniel by a century or more. More, actually. By more than a century, I should say. So Isaiah is way ahead of Daniel on that as far as the story of like the 3 Hebrew children in the fiery furnace. You remember when they were ordered to worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, when the instruments of music would play, the 6 instruments of music would play, and then the 6-cubit high statue or whatever was 6 by 60 or something like that. There was 60 and 6 in there. It was very reminiscent of, Revelation is very reminiscent of Daniel, I should say. The image there, very evocative of the mark of the beast, is it not? And so the 3 Hebrew children were to be tossed into a fiery furnace if they would not bow down and worship this image. And of course, they did not bow down and worship the image, and they were thrown into the fiery furnace. But from in the fiery furnace, they were glorifying God, and the king heard it from there, and it terrified him a bit, as it would. So even in the midst of the fires, and I got to tell you something, as far as I'm concerned, when I hear that, it's like, there's nothing like, I don't know, the being in the fires and stuff, there's an inspiration in that, that I see where the singing comes from. You go through a lot of difficult things, and it informs your understanding. Like and it gives you inspiration. When you survive something difficult, you may have something to say about it later. And so I think it's interesting to me. I don't know. I wouldn't say I had such a, whatever. I don't want to talk about that. I was just going to talk about the general idea of inspiration and the way hard things that you go through can serve as the basis for an inspiration. Like very few people are inspired without some sort of pain or joy, some strong emotion. It's not, creativity and stuff like that comes from places often that are dark and painful. I know, because it's like, when I was content and when everything was going well, I didn't often feel inspired. Certainly not to write about my condition. Why write about my boring life that isn't really that, it's certainly nothing to sing about. But then you go through the fires. You go through be tossed to and fro in the sea. You might find a song to write about it. It's funny because I was like, I don't much. What is that written down? Oh, yeah. So let's see where when I talk about being inspired to write songs, I think about the titles I've been writing down of things I want to write. Well, you may have seen the video I came out with. I want to mention I came out with a video yesterday. If you haven't seen it, go to the youtube.com/user/Paul Strangini, as I show often here. Like, that's literally what you can type into your browser there, and you will find my other channel. Because I have a personal URL that I got grandfathered in. My channel isn't legitimately big enough to have that, but I got it anyways because I got it years ago. But anyways, I brought a new video. I suggest you go watch it, called Racism is Bad. But it takes kind of strong things to inspire good, interesting art. Interesting art doesn't come from boredom. It comes from pain. But the best kind comes from pain. I think some can come from you can come from other suffering for sure. It doesn't have to be pain, physical pain by any means. But, I've observed people who, they were musicians their entire life and mediocre. Then they go through some terrible thing, and also they're writing really interesting songs. And it's interesting like that. They find their muse, as it said. And, your muse might be the apocalypse. Maybe you've never written a song before, but going through the end of the world can have an effect. I always took my inspiration from the Bible. It's always inspired me because it has all the emotion ready-made there. I only have to just sort of tap into it, listen to it. It's an entirely different thing to come up with it from the depths of your own soul. But when you have things happen, I feel like it happened to me the past year as the pandemic affected me. Not the pandemic itself, of course, just the human reaction to it. One of the things that recently, I've had several people tell me, Paul, we fight not against flesh and blood, as I talk about the pandemic and the response of the government agencies and stuff. I'll talk about, we don't fight against flesh and blood, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, did I talk about getting guns and fighting against flesh and blood in a flesh and blood way? So you understand, it's like, when I'm talking, that's the appropriate venue for a spiritual battle. It happens through us talking about things men do. The point of we wrestle not against flesh and blood is not for you to fold your hands and do nothing and to just let things go by. That's something that drives me nuts a little bit with Christians who've been friends of mine over the time. And from far back, they have my old attitude, which was very much almost like we're here like colonists, not colonists, but like tourists, this is not our home. We don't really involve ourselves with the affairs of this life. We are so separate. We're so focused on our spiritual things and our intellectual development in Christ. And we excuse ourselves from these fights, thinking that we got no skin in the game. That's not for us. We're about spiritual things, about heaven, and we wrestle not against flesh and blood. No, we wrestle not at all. Is what it is. We wrestle not. No, we join the world. We just socking away our things. We're just doing it just like the world does. And we wrestle not. We wrestle not is really what it means. We wrestle not. Not we wrestle not against flesh. No, we wrestle not. We just sequester ourselves over here. And we don't get involved in that stuff. Involved in what way? It is a spiritual battle. That's why I'm fighting it spiritually with words. Words, and it's like, who do you think Paul was talking about they were wrestling against? Certain men whose mouths must be stopped. Certain people who are real people in the world. They weren't imaginal. He wasn't talking about we got to pray against Samyaza the angel. We wrestle against Samyaza the angel. He's come down from the sky. He's influencing people. We've got to worry about him. What are you talking about? We wrestle against? What do you think? There's some other form the evil spirits come in other than the guise of men? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God. Yeah, we don't make war according to the flesh. Yes. And when I talk about bullshit pandemic, I'm not talking about fighting it physically, like getting a competing vaccine. I don't even know what this meant sometimes when people say these things to me, because I'm really not sure what they mean by that. Should probably ask for clarification. Like, what do you mean? Oh, don't get too worried about it. Blah, blah, blah. So you understand, every man in his generation has a duty to speak the truth. And you can't just take a rain check on it and just I just won't participate. Oh, good, go ahead. You don't realize that at some point the reason things are happening in front of you is for you to react to them. It's like the person, it was like I was walking down the road and I saw a guy beat up on the side of the road. I'm the Good Samaritan. I'm going to give you that parable a little bit. Like the Good Samaritan parable, except I'm the guy who says, I'm the Pharisee who passes on the other side and says, oh, I don't want to go near a dead body. Or, because I wrestle not against flesh and blood. Well, there's a man beat up on the side of the road. Don't want to help him. Why? Because I wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'll give him a spiritual blessing. It was talked about in James. You can't tell people, be blessed and filled, and then not give them the things necessary. And just staying out of everything that happens in the world, avoiding every conflict, not speaking out, not looking for an opportunity to preach the gospel. I don't know. I'm certainly, that's not where I'm at. As far as the old times when I thought, yeah, we should remain hands off, I've changed my mind. You know, I don't know what exactly I'm supposed to do, but it's not sit there and fold my. I've always known that, like fold your hand. I mean, there are some fights you don't need to get into, and I certainly don't want to fight them the way the world fights them. You know what I mean, it's like speaking about it is not the same as like trying to use. You know, it's like because when I look at it, why do I write music and stuff? It's like, well, to influence people culturally. Actually, the truth is, why do I not to influence anybody? Just to make something that could influence people because I can, and because I need to do those things that God gives me that I can do. And I don't, whether or not it actually goes far, it doesn't matter. If I help 100 people or encourage 100 people, then that's a good thing. That was one thing that was done good. You know, even it says, who gives a servant even a cup of cold water will not lose their reward. There's a lot of good you can do that doesn't have to be like this big, grand thing. The main thing is that we've been given gifts by God and we should use them. Like in the parable of the talents. I don't want to just like bury everything God gives me in the earth. I mean, like telling myself, well, we don't wrestle against these things, so I don't need to use that tool for this fight. In fact, I don't even need to be in the fight. I'm just going to go hide. I'm just going to go bury my head in the sand. Just like, well, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. As the churches are being shut down. As the churches are being shut down. Well, we just got to obey what they say. You know, it's like, there's a different, you know, again, people think it means like our enemies aren't human. No, that's not what it means. Not what it means. It doesn't mean our enemies, you know, you understand, the high priest that crucified Jesus was a spiritual enemy. You know what I mean? He was not a wrestle against flesh and blood, but Jesus was, you know what I mean, in coming before him, he was coming for an enemy, and the enemy was a flesh and blood enemy, but the spiritual component was the real thing. You know what I mean? Like the you can't just look at a flesh and blood enemy and not see the spiritual component. Like if someone comes to me and we have an argument about the gospel, that's a battle in the spirit. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't go like, oh no, I don't debate humans because I don't wrestle against flesh and blood. This may sound silly, but I've been rebuked with this and it annoys me because it's like, what are you saying? Stop doing what you're doing? You know what? I'm not going to respond to that because I had two things come to my mind, both of which were very rude and one of which was profane. So I'm not going to say either one. No, woe to me if I do not what I do. I will sing from the fires. You know? From the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs. Glory to the righteous. I get this part. There's song, like, you know what I mean? Like, I tell you what, it's a funny thing. I write songs about exulting in the victory of God. You know what I mean? Like, he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. You know, and I want to write songs with titles like When Father Swings His Mighty Fist, you know, that kind of stuff. I like that. But, you know, in the midst of all, we hear the fire, the survival, you know. But the prophet is mindful. What does it take to get there? Like I said, when Jesus returns, the battle will cause there to be blood to the depth of the horse's bridle in whatever location that is referring to. And it's not hard. Like I said, it's not that like if you take a million bodies and squeeze all the blood out of it, it wouldn't take long to fill up quite a container. All right. So, but I said my leanness. I almost want to just blow by that because I don't even feel like I need it. That doubling of leanness. Oh my! You know, it's like my my lack. I suppose. Let's see what the other translations make of this. I just want to know what. Like, I don't really find that a sticking point. I already know everything I want to say about this, but I just wanted to touch on leanness because I realized I don't know how to tell you how to interpret that little metaphor. Or was it an idiom? I forgot. What is the leanness there for? What does it refer to? Okay, that's Isaiah 1. I need to get to 24. 24. There we go. Oh. My leanness, was it 15, 16? Yeah. My leanness. Leanness or wasting. He repeats it. So let's just see. Let's look in everyone's favorite translation from Satan himself, the NIV. And of course, you guys know I'm kidding on that. Kind of, because I don't hate the NIV, but I'm not a huge fan of. I think here's the thing. I think having so many translations in English is ever so useful. So I'm thankful for the NIV. I'm thankful for the RSV. I'm thankful for the NAB and all the other ones, the LIV and the whatever. All right. I waste away. Woe to me. Okay. I guess that's see that my leanness, and they're saying I waste away. Okay. That's an interesting thought translation. Like that's what they think. And look, sometimes it helps to have someone give me some idea of what people are thinking. Let's just try the ASV. This is just the King James. I want the ASV, the American Standard Version, or the New American Bible. I'm just funny how many versions there are. From the Amongst Power Songs, Lord, pine away. Okay, my leanness, my pining, my wasting. If I think of it in that sense, like my wasting, I don't really like to say, well, I guess, says the thing is like, he literally says my wasting. And that's why the interpretation is, as it says there, I pine away or I waste away. That's not how it's formulated in Hebrew. So that's why it's not a translation there. It's a interpretation, or an interpretation for those of you playing at home. So anyway, so I have a leanness in me. I have a wasting away. I have a pining in me. So there's a sort of a sense of exultant rejoicing at survival. But then there's another side of it. My leanness. I waste away. Meaning I think what it's saying is like there's a rejoicing, and then on the other side there is great sorrow. Because the idea of wasting away from within. You ever been eaten up inside? Like it's just eating me up. Like the internal feeling of, I woke up this morning, my stomach was all like upset. I need to have a little something to eat, but it also tends to be stress and stuff. I know that happens to me. We have reactions to circumstances, right, within our body. There's a psychosomatic reaction sometimes to different things. I remember when I was told by a doctor that my son might not survive the next operation. I remember losing, like starting to see everything go dim, and I felt like I was losing consciousness, and then snapping into it, and like just the news, it was a little too heavy. You get heavy news like that, it makes you reel a bit. And other kinds of things in your mind can cause you to go, in the sense, lean. To waste away from within. So instead of being built up, because the idea of rejoicing is like growth and vivaciousness and life, but sorrow is eating and wasting and devouring from within. And he says, woe unto me, for treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously. Yea, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. Again, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Who cares, Isaiah? Why are you worried? Just sing. Trust God. Just sing. What are you all worried about? Treacherous dealers. I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe that's right. Maybe they're right. We worry about the treacherous dealers. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. We just got to stick with, let's just go our little Bible studies, and we'll do this and that and the other, and just kind of sneak our way through life, without being noticed, if possible, and come out the other side. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Whatever we think we're doing by doing that. Yeah, they've been treacherous. Like here's the thing. With the pandemic, man-made pandemic, perhaps, whatever. certainly man released, whatever, man involved, they do all these things. They come in, interfere with people's lives, declare some people's very livelihood to be unessential, and start telling them they can't even work. Okay? And they do all these things through lies and manipulation. And the only purpose of all of that was to get rid of the last president. I mean, the reason why they acted the way, like, we would have approached the pandemic much differently if we had had a different president. That's what if there even would have been a pandemic. If there even would have been one. We would have approached it very differently. There would have been a lot more like, stay calm. Don't be afraid. It affects only very few people. And then later on, they'd be like, well, President, Democrat, whoever, there have been 500,000 deaths. Well, you got to put this into context and blah, blah, blah. There have been all kinds of context. Like I said, all kinds of, and as these lies, manipulations, and people's lives are literally ruined by this action, I'm supposed to just say, I wrestle not against flesh and blood. Let's talk about something else. Let's not even fight. Let's not fight this fight. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to go out and I will never go out and start acquiring weapons and bombs and this kind of stuff that people use to think that they're going to change. I don't even know why. Why is there even anyone doing that? I mean, there isn't really. I mean, they're just so anxious to have it. They really want to find white supremacists and all that stuff. That's why I want to get this racism is bad video out. I want it established. Because as anyone who knows where I come from, as coming out of the identity movement, the Christian identity movement, I'm not particularly fond of identitarian politics and all this race-baiting crap that's going on. I'm particularly not fond of it. Because it's part of, it's bad religion that I've already rejected. And I have a particular animosity towards. I'm not fond of it at all. And so, yeah, I think we need to fight it. And it's not about fighting flesh and blood. But they're going to be looking for white supremacists and stuff. And I want to make sure they know, it's like, no, I don't believe in that crap. I'm a Christian. And I'm here to make war. That, though, what I mean? It's like, I remember seeing the Pentagon general get up there in front of Congress, Milley or whatever his name was. Oh, we want to see the roots of the white rage and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, he wants to fight us, does he? I want to fight him. I want to fight the Pentagon in the culture war. This is a culture war. I'm fighting you, but I'm not going to send missiles and rockets and garbage. And if you do that to me, then you're cheating because that's not what you're supposed to do. But whatever, the Lord protect me if possible, if he will. I mean, I don't think that's what's coming, but they want to engage in this battle, then by all means. Because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God. We will make a spiritual war on them. And then we will spiritually take their heads and flay them alive. Spiritually. Just kidding. But but I mean, literally, the whole point is it's a battle of words and over men's hearts and minds. I mean, that's what preaching the gospel is about in the first place. I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, But the preaching of the gospel is not just, hey, believe in Jesus. Jesus had a lot more to say than just believe in me. I'm going to lay on the cross for you, or lay on the cross. It goes back to my dad's song from when I was a kid. There's a line, he lay there on the cross, which I always thought there was a weird way to describe it because it's not particularly the right word. You don't just lay there on the cross. I mean, geez, in a sense, it's kind of a marvelous understatement, to just lay there. Anyways, the enemies deal treacherously, right? And so when the prophets speak, they speak about things going on. Like Isaiah talks about the injustice in the society he lived in. He doesn't propose solutions of, okay, this is what we got to do. We got to pass bills. I'm not into that stuff. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm waging the culture war. That means I want to try to help affect people's minds. It takes a while because, the effect of what I'm doing may not be felt ever, or it might be a generation or whatever. Or maybe, the main point for me is I just got to do what I have to do. I got to do what God has given me to do. And if I do that, then I fulfilled my job. And to whatever degree I've done that, then I'll be pleased and not ashamed. That's my main concern. I don't want to be ashamed before the Lord and be the one who said, like, well, yeah, I thought of things to do, but I thought, oh, better not, because I don't wrestle. I wouldn't want to get involved in something I shouldn't be involved in. The thing is, if I'm not supposed to be involved in, the Lord has a way of letting me know if he wants, if it's important to him. Or also, even so, it may be something that he has decided I should go down a certain path that maybe in the end is the wrong path, but I learned some important lesson from it. So, in some way, I know I'm going to have to answer to the future and say, okay, did you agree with that? Do you still agree with that? Because there are things from my past that I don't agree with anymore. But the point is, the prophets complain about treachery and all this treacherous dealing going on like we had. We still have. They're still being treacherous with us. Like I said, they want to turn the instruments of the government inwards on the American people to look for terrorism among us, especially the white terrorism. It doesn't even exist, but they want it so badly. They want people to be doing this stuff. And I really hope people don't. There's no reason to take up arms. We don't have to. We just need to take up words until I'm not worried about taking up arms unless they were to stop us from speaking. And then, that's something we'd have to talk about then. We won't be able to talk about it. And I think that at that point, once they stop you from speaking, it won't be up to me. You know what I mean? It won't be up to me. See, the thing is, right now, we have an option to keep silence or to speak. And when it comes to fighting, when the fighting comes, you don't get options. The fighting comes to you. You know what I mean? You don't get to decide whether or not you want to be part of the fighting. You don't have, what I'm saying is you may not want to fight, but you're going to be in it anyways. You're going to be in the fight. You're going to be in the midst of it. And so the question is, did I do everything I could to keep that from happening? And then I'm going to just do whatever I can. But whether or not I stop it is not important. That's not important to me. Because it's like, the main thing is that I should react properly, that I should do what God wants me to do in the face of the enemy. You know what I mean? Because that point is just about my development and your development. Whatever, when we face the enemy, with the Lord at our side, that is God's work, and that is part of what makes us his. Like that's what I'm praying and developing a relationship with God so that when I go into the midst of the fires, I trust, as the 3 Hebrew children did in the midst of the fiery furnace, that God is with me and that I'm not afraid of what the enemy could do, even if it means the enemy kills me. Because just because they didn't die in the fiery furnace, they could have just died in the fiery furnace, and then on the day of the resurrection, God could go, see, you're all right. But we've been dead for a couple thousand years. It's like, yeah, but look, in the end, you're back. And besides, now you're alive forever. So, make up for it. You lost 1,000 years. Whoop-de-doo. Now you have 1 billion. And more than 1 billion, we can't. It's funny because, like the scripture says, the Lord has set, is it eternity in our hearts? Eternity. There's a sense of we can muse upon the idea of infinity, of everlasting life. We can imagine like everlasting life, because we haven't experienced death yet. Because after death, you just can't imagine everlasting life. It kind of ruins it. And that's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, obviously. Fear of the pit and the snare upon the inhabitant. There's all kinds of things. There's hazards out here in the world. There are upon the inhabitants of the earth. And what is the job? What is the responsibility of the prophets? To warn. When we are given warning first, we are then to warn others. That's why he says, hey, inhabitant of the earth, the pit and the snare and the fear are on you. Fear is very dangerous. That's what they used against people last year. You see how easily the whole herd was stampeded to do one thing? I find it terrifying because you think about it. Well, then now we know. Everything. It's just like, honestly, all the world is waiting for is just one thing to turn our entire planet into a totalitarian nightmare. And that's what you see in Revelation. The world is going into a totalitarian nightmare at some point. And unfortunately, as much as I'd like that not to be true, I don't want that to be true. I don't want it to happen in my lifetime. I don't want it to happen in the lifetime of my children or my grandchildren or anyone associated with me or my friends or even my enemies. I really don't wish it on anyone. But even so, I look at men and I say, well, the men, humans, are ripe. They're ripe for a totalitarian nightmare. Because they will do what they're told. Just because the people are in charge. Even if the people in charge are buffoons and demonstrable liars and also completely devious and unreliable and treacherous and all those things. No matter how, people will just go along with it. And I think even to the sacrifice of their neighbors and the deaths of their friends, they will go along. Just like in Nazi Germany. The totalitarian, when people give over to it, they, suddenly they're turning their neighbors in, and it's just, this is just what we do, and very few people are able to resist that, very few people are. Everyone always thinks like, oh, I'd be like Schindler helping the Jews escape. Yeah, right. What were you doing last year? When everyone was wearing the mask and you didn't want to, did you wear it anyways? Well, gotta say, people say, well, it's not the same as the mark of the beast. It's not. It's similar, though, and let me tell you that. And if you've run with the footmen and they have wearied you, how will you contend with horses? If you think last year was hard, I think it was hard not to wear a mask. I thought it was hard. Boy, what a pussy am I. That's how I feel. Because, you think that was hard? You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. The mark of the beast? Are you kidding me? If you thought because they believed there was a pandemic that was going to be a lot more deadly than it actually was, people say, I know people who died. It's like, well, I don't, and it doesn't matter because I know the numbers. Put them in context with all the deaths, and it's the reaction. It's people like, what do you mean bullshit? It's because it's not that there wasn't a disease or anything. It's like just that everything that was done in relationship to it, everything that was said about it was all lies. Or so encrusted with lies and distortions that you could not tell them from lies. And that's what the fear, the fear comes first, and it causes people to flee. The noise. There's some noise that makes people, something's coming, and they run and they stampede. Oh, we'll do whatever you say. And so as they run from the fear, run, it's coming, run, they fall into the pit. Because that's the whole point. It's to terrify you, so you fall in the pit. And once you're in the pit, you try to get out of the pit, well, now they're waiting for you with the snare. The fear, the pit, and the snare. There are a couple of times in the Bible where they use similar things, like where it talks about the lion, the bear, and the whatever. He fled. It was as if a man fled from a lion and a bear met him, and then he went into the house and put his hand on the table, and he put his hand through something. I forgot what it was. Arrested it, put his hand and pierced it. It was like it was like a scene like that. It's like a guy went out and he stepped on a rake, and then a shovel hit him, and then a tree fell on him, and then whatever. All these things. It was saying is this big tumultuous things. Like I said, when the apocalypse comes, people will not understand what's going on. And so fear will be used to manipulate them, just like it was in the pandemic. And the manipulation of fear will line them in a trap from which they will not escape. And when they try to escape, they will find they are still trapped because there are other snares waiting for them. Do not allow the fear to take you. Once it takes you, fear in many levels. Fear, one, of things that could come against us, such as like the 3 Hebrew children in the fiery furnace. I'm going to be thrown in the fiery furnace. I'm so afraid. Fear of that. Fear of men. Well, what will people do? What will people say? I'll be in trouble with people. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to go out without a mask on. I hated it. I don't like it. I don't like being a spectacle, especially because it's not the mark of the beast. I didn't feel particularly great about it. But I felt compelled to do it because I'm not gonna, because I will not succumb to the fear. I remember there were times when I knew I was infected. I was certain I was infected because someone infected was living in my house. And so I still visited my dad that weekend, who's almost 80 and who has many preconditions. Because I will not allow the fear to rule over me. Especially when like I said, it's not fear, not of a significant threat. Because remember, even to people over 80, 97% survivable. I know everyone doesn't survive, but you know what? My dad did, and he took it on. He knew I could get sick, I could die, but you know what? I'd rather live free than die a slave. I'd rather live openly and honestly before God than cowering in a corner in fear of my life. That's, my dad is not going to live like that. I'm certainly not going to enable someone I love to live like that or encourage it. Oh, hi, Dad. Hi, we wouldn't want to lose you, so we won't talk to you for a year. And it might be your last year. Like all these old people, their kids staying away from them and keeping the grandkids away for a whole year. And then they die anyways of something else or of loneliness. It's like, God, it's so terrible. And and it was all to manipulate everything for their power. You'd be assured of that. We were manipulated. Not only that, the wealth transfer, oh my God, the things they did. The printing money. If you have savings, they've been destroyed. You just don't realize it yet. Economic things like that take a while to shift and move. There's going to be a massive correction. As like a correction. It's like when they say earthquake? What an earthquake is, it's when the crust of the earth has a little bit of a correction because it's got a little out of balance and it's got to shift back so it's going to be correct. That's what they call it corrections. They should call it earthquakes. Financial earthquakes. Yeah, because there are things, when there's a big gap between the money supply and the actual available goods and all that, and the demand and all that. There are things that have to happen to correct that situation, and they will happen. Because economics is a science. It's not just magic. You cannot... There's certain laws that just do not... You mess with them, you can tinker with them, but eventually there's a price to pay. Everything comes around again. You take shortcuts on a job... Later on down the road, you're going to pay for that. Either in the long-term quality of your build or a lot of other things. We got to do things right. For the windows from on high are open, the foundation. Windows, to me, that's like windows into the heavenly world or into another dimension. I've often wondered about the windows versus the idea of like the bottomless pit. Because of the bottomless pit, the pit of the abyss, is that something actually in the earth, on the earth, or would it be sort of located in that place? I mean, I definitely don't think of it as part of the earth. I think of it as something interdimensional. And same thing with these windows from on high. The windows from on high opening means the opening of a passage between heaven and earth. Not just the heaven of the sky, but the heaven of God, the dimension where God dwells and the angels with him. And as we know from the book of Revelation, when you read chapter 12, that the devil will be cast out of heaven and come down to earth in a way that is special and different from any other time. And I know that because it says so. It says, "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil has come down unto you, having great wrath, for he knows he hath but a short time." There's no other time. People who say Revelation's all in the past, I just don't see how anything that happened in the time of Rome was in some way special or more unusual than Babylon or Assyria or anything else that had happened prior. And so while we could look at the Roman Empire and the events under Nero and see some sort of correlation, of course we see a correlation, because all the prophecies concerning the end times are based on prophecies concerning things that happened at other times, like Assyria, Babylon. And so it's not surprising. Oh, look at Rome fits in here too. Yeah, so does Assyria and Babylon. They don't, it's almost like these scholars aren't actual scholars of the Bible. I mean, they're scholars of something else. I mean, because like they know about, they have their doctrine, but it's like, it's almost like they don't know that the Old Testament exists or something. Like they should know this. Because to me, it's like the most obvious thing in the world that the prophecy in the New Testament is just connected indelibly to the Old Testament prophecies. They're so similar. So the idea of windows from heaven on high being open, the devil is cast out of heaven. And also his angels are cast out with him. And the idea of windows from on high being open, that does also evoke thoughts of like Noah's flood. And that's a good evocation, because Noah's flood, it's compared sometimes to Noah's flood, the end of the world. They were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the flood. Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and took them all away. You know what I mean? So the end times is compared to that, as the days of Noah were. So also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And of course, in the days of Noah, the windows of heaven were open and the water came out, right? And here the windows from on high are open and things come out. There is a rain. There is things that come out. Like out of the bottomless pit there comes forth a smoke, and out of the smoke comes the locusts. And the locusts are symbolic of this army that is affecting the world, of Satan's sort of army, his power going out into the world and taking things over in whatever capacity. We're not going to go into that right now, but there are more than one way to possibly consider that. We may do Revelation again sometime. It's a popular study I do, and so, it's something I like to cover. I feel like covering it again sometime. Maybe not right away. I've been asked to go back to Psalms, because people like the Psalms, and I do too. The Psalms are easy. It's almost too easy. Like the challenge here is much more steep. The foundations of the earth do shake. The idea of the shaking of the foundations of the earth, it means it goes down to the very basis of existence. When God shakes things down to the foundations of the earth, that means that the whole of human existence is being shaken. And the earth is like something that does not move. We have earthquakes, right? But the earth itself is always there. But there's prophecies of like the greatest shaking ever to come upon the earth. Okay, in the book of Revelation, at the seventh trump, there's a great earthquake, such as was not seen since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake and so great. And so the earth is utterly broken down, the earth is clean dissolved, earth is moved exceedingly. I think some of this language is maybe a bit off. I'm going to see here. I think I still have the NIV here. No, what do we got? American Standard, ASV, that's fine. That's what the American Standard. Fear in the pit, the snare. The earth is broken. The earth is rent asunder, is shaken violently. Clean dissolved. I just didn't think that was good. But torn apart. If rent asunder is clean as dissolved. Utterly broken. Clean dissolved just sounds weird. Because I think of things dissolving cleanly in water, like salt. Salt cleanly dissolves in water. Like the word clean here is obviously in the King James. Where am I? Okay. It's just such a weird, it's almost like saying that's plumb silly. That's clean dissolved. I don't know. It just feels very, clean dissolved. So anyways, let's just take that as more like, because dissolved sounds like almost like it's evaporated. It's like it's turned into nothing, like it got blew up into dust. But that's not really what it's saying. It's like, the earth is torn apart, referring and moved exceedingly. There's going to be terrors in the earth, breaking, The earth is going to get hit hard. The book of Revelation makes that clear. The earth is going to get hit hard. There's going to be meteor strikes. There's going to be sea in the waves, roaring men's hearts, failing them for fear and for looking after those things that are coming on the earth. There's going to be some pretty nasty stuff. So the earth is definitely going to get whacked good. But it's going to persist, obviously. But the perception of man on the earth is going to be quite a roller coaster ride. And like it says, the earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. I mean, that idea of like the earth staggering around like a drunk man. But think about this idea of the earth going from one crisis to the next. You know what I mean? Not able, staggering under the weight of it. I mean, like I said, I've said to people, like, they're like, is the pandemic some sort of apocalyptic? It's like, just wait and see. Everyone's always so anxious to be the one to predict it. But it's like, what? There's no awards for that. Be ready. At some point, someone's going to say, hey, guess what? The bridegroom is coming. Let's go out and meet him. And you're going to need oil in your lamp. And if you're too busy jerking around with the newspapers, you're not going to have any oil in your lamp. You know, and people say, well, what about you said flesh and blood and wrestling? It's like, I see your point. But it's not, when I talk about the newspapers, I mean like where people read prophecy into the news all the time. It's not the same as like looking at the things men doing that are unrighteous and saying, no, we must oppose this with the gospel and with our words. You know, we have to fight against it. Like with the, you know, when they start talking about forcing children into hormone treatments, that's something that, you know, I'm not going to get a gun and fight that. But, you know, what people understand is, like I said in my song, I'm a Native American. I will lay my life down for what I believe in. I'm not interested in killing anyone. I'm going to speak the truth. And then when necessary, I will just die and put my body on top of the problem. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I will fight the problem. I'll fight the problem by dying for it, if necessary. Whatever it happens to be that I see has that value. There are certain levels of things I believe in, which my most powerful thing I can do is get you to kill me. I mean you, but, you know, I mean, get them to kill me. So I've said this to several people who are very you know, they want to fight the government. I'm like, no, don't do that. And certainly if you feel troubled and despondent, never kill yourself either. Make them kill you. You know? Speak the truth until they can't tolerate you. Speak the truth until, you know, I look at it as exciting. And also, see, I look at this verse here. And this is, honestly, for me, this verse 16 is like my life. That's how it feels. I'm exulting in the midst of the fire, glory to the righteous, singing praises to God in the midst of all the things, but also in the same sense, oh, my leanness. You know, it affects me. It does. I don't get out of this unaffected. I don't just I'm not a robot that can just sing. It's like, it troubles me. It's troubling to live. It's on one hand, it's exciting to live in times when I get so moved by things going on in the world that I write songs like Racism is Bad that could have an impact for good, I hope. Or that could lead some people to really hate me. You know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to expose that stuff. You know, they're supposed to be from their perspective, they think they're the good guys. They think that they didn't, because they're not Christians. They don't know, like, oh yeah, you know, stoning the adulterous woman, you know, they think, to them it's like, well, we would never stone an adulterous woman. We'll stone the racists. Yeah. You know, again, it's one category of sin that people are going to say, oh, we put this over all others. This is the one category of sin we don't tolerate. It's such hypocrisy. You know, the stone the sinner mentality. And that's the world we live in. And the thing is, though, that is so ugly. You know, I don't know if you saw the song, but but this, and you probably have, but I'm gonna put it up here anyways. In 1 second. All right. You've probably seen this cover. All right. Where's the picture viewer? Image viewer. Let's see how it works. Ah, a little big. All right, well, whatever. This is as small as it gets. Here we go. That's not too bad. But like that image. You can't see the whole image, but the image is of a man on the ground, someone on the ground, and someone's about to stone him, and he's got this fist he's making, some sort of symbol of power. And so like this, but this is the world we're living in, where people are saying, no, what we need to do is what the guy with, that's me. He's stoning a racist, because racism is bad, and people who do, people who are bad people need to be killed, apparently. Now, I don't believe this. Well, I mean, I kind of do, right? We're Christians. I certainly believe that for our sins, we deserve to perish. But Christianity is not about this image. This is the image that Jesus said, hey, he that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. And the truth is, he that is without whiteness, or whatever, I don't know. I don't believe in that crap. I don't believe in any of that. There's no difference between the two in Jesus. I know we have differences, right? But the choice to focus on them and to make them the emphasis, and it's just absolutely not. It's just unwise. But anyways, that's such an ugly attitude that we see in the world today. And so I look at it as an opportunity. When the enemy is behaving so foolishly, to just come in and just stick the knife in and twist it spiritually, to try to intercept their to take their foolish, when they're getting carried away with themselves and forgetting themselves and not seeing themselves as they truly are, not realizing like, hey, wait a second, we're the bad guys. Or we're acting like we don't think of ourselves, because the guy in that picture thinks he's the good guy. He's trying to make up for his racism by wiping out racism. The earth is going to go through a lot of convulsions. We went through a convulsion the last year. You see how there's convulsive things that can happen, and it's not even much, just fear. The fear leads to the snare. The fear to the pit to the snare, I should say. Remove like a cottage. Well, like a cottage is referring here like a temporary dwelling. Oftentimes they would put in it talks about a cottage in a vineyard in another place. And what it refers to is like a shack, like a very ad hoc shelter built only to be temporary. Often these were built in, let's say you have a harvest to bring in, a big field, like let's say grapes or whatever, right? And, what does it say here what it is? Does it say anything? No. But, whatever, you have a lot of stuff to harvest, right? And so what you do is, instead of traveling to and from the work site, which may be somewhat distant from where you live, they would literally camp out in the field. And then you'd get up in the morning, harvest all day, and then just go to bed right there in your shelter. But these things were not meant to last, and they didn't. And the earth was going to become like that. Removed that word removed is probably not good. It should just say moved. Or let's see, maybe I'm wrong there. Hold on. That's a guesstimate, by the way. Sometimes I do text guesstimates, which is where I kind of guess what the text is trying to say based on my experience. But because I've seen the word removed where it should have been translated moved. So let's see. Noise of the pit. Okay. Earth is moved exceedingly. Totter, shake, slip. The earth shall reel to and fro. The drunkard removed. Yeah, let me show you right here. This is what I mean. See, I'm not wrong. I am wrong occasionally, but not here. Done the good old browse internet thing, and then bring the internet up. So here we go. Reel to and fro like a drunkard. Be removed like a cottage. But removed. I'll put up a cottage. Give it a second. And Maluna, that's a lodge, a hut, a shack. See, watchman's hut. Temporary shack, just meant to keep the rain off and a little bit of the wind, maybe, Just a basic windbreak and shade shelter. No rain, to be able to get out of the sun. But look what this word means. To move to and fro, to wander, flutter, show grief. It doesn't mean to actually take away. It means to move, literally to move. It could mean, like we move, in English, the word move, like we could say the family moved. We mean they got up and left. Like they're gone. Like they literally removed themselves from where they used to live to someplace else. But move in English also just means this, like, I'm moving. Even right now, I'm moving. I move. Right? In that sense, and this is more like what it's talking about, just it'll move to and fro. The earth will be moved. Not that it's going someplace. Not that it's going away, because the Bible does say, a lot of this here is a bit of hyperbole about the earth, the degree to which the earth is going to be, to a very great degree, the earth is going to be affected, of course. But there is almost a hyperbolic. It almost sounds like, how shall the earth survive? And it will feel like that. Think about when the dinosaurs were wiped out and they show like those images of like meteors striking the earth. The earth has gone through some very severe cataclysms in the past. And therefore, the earth can sustain a lot of damage. And the earth can be moved exceedingly and still go on. And later on produce all kinds of life and stuff and support all that. So, the fact the earth is going to get hit hard doesn't mean it's the end for the earth. But for man dwelling on it, it will be the end of an age. And we will barely squeak through. Men will almost be extinct. Certainly the thought that men might become extinct in the midst of it will cross men's minds. That this could be the end for us. Because that's the thing, is most of the stuff about the earth and like people are like, oh, we got to save the earth. All that means is they got to save it for us. Because if we're destroying it, we're only destroying it on our own behalf. We're the ones most likely to suffer. Well, us and the other big mammals. The big mammals first, obviously. It becomes harder and harder for them to live and reproduce on a planet so unhospitable to life. And we ourselves, we can ruin it for ourselves. But there will be, cockroaches and stuff, and then the cockroaches will have babies, and the world will go on. Should we remember, the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it. So, it's carrying transgressions. The earth has transgressions on it. And when the idea of them weighing heavy, it's like, you ever heard we have the idiom like, oh, it's weighing heavily on my mind. Like that kind of, the very same kind of thing. It's heavy. The transgressions of the earth are heavy on it. The reason the earth is suffering this way is because of the transgressions. They're what's bringing it about. That's why it's so severe. Because the transgressions are severe. The transgressions are come to the full. That's one of the things. Is when the transgressors are come to the full. Daniel. Shall fall and not rise again. Well, not as it had. It will fall and not rise again, meaning as it had before. Nothing will be the same after this. The whole world will change. And the world as it has been. That is the thing, is that the world of man is coming to an end. And the reign of man is coming to an end. I almost wonder, as they talk about all this UFO phenomenon, they're coming clean about it and stuff. It's a weird time. It's almost like they're preparing us for it. Like, get ready. We're going to get visitors from someplace else. Maybe the windows will open and the visitors will come through and say hello. Who knows? But like, let me tell you, the aliens come through and they start telling, my dad always was worried about aliens potentially. Not worried. He would hate it. I said worried. He was always somewhat mindful of the fact that, I remember he hated the movie E.T. when I was a kid. I remember like, why did he hate E.T.? I loved E.T. Well, because the idea that because he saw that, if an alien came, the people are being prepared to just think they're wonderful. That we had movies like that where the aliens were not so wonderful, where at first they seemed wonderful, then they were like reptiles eating us and stuff, like V. Remember V? I do. But, I don't know. The thing is, the earth and the people upon it, they should be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit. That's interesting. They should be gathered together. Oh, wait. You know what? We're out of time. Let's leave it at verse 20. We'll pick it up at 21 because I do not want to. I thought, oh, can I quickly cover the last 3 verses? Nope. I don't want to leave it alone. So let's just continue that tomorrow at verse 21. Thanks for joining me in the study. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. And for, Lord willing, a full week of studies. God is always willing. I just pray he will give me a good night's sleep every night so I can make sure I'm here in the morning. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Faces shall be as flames. Behold, the day of Yahweh cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and Orion shall not cause their light to shine. The sun darkened in his going forth, and the moonlight shall not shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause to cease the arrogancy of the proud,